Hey peeps, Jessie here. So I'm recording this video to kind of explain the thought process about the talent planning for FL department itself. Yeah, so if you look into it, it's actually very simple. There's only like three different structures proposed based on what the reality or the situation your LC is in. So let's just take it one by one, okay? Before I go into the structure, I'll talk about like the VPFL role itself. So generally as VPFL, looking into the main role, these are the KPI that we have. So there's a whole list here which you can take a look, and basically these are the things that you will be working to achieve for the whole of your term, right? So these are the tasks that help you achieve this KPI. Yeah. So in terms of the main competencies, for you to be able to actually achieve these things, you would need a main competency of being data savvy, but level 3. Okay. So for data savvy, how we actually define it is that um, for your core competence is that you actually use data to actually identify the red flags and the success of the department, and you can actually brainstorm for possible strategies. So at a VP level, and especially being a VP of a strategic department, being data savvy is actually super important, because only when you take the data that you have in the context that you have and you draw a lot of useful inferences, those are the things that can help you define a very clear way forward to actually support your products. Yeah, so I think this is super important as a VPFL, right? And so the second thing would be resilient. So resilient level 3, the definition being that you can be flexible with the changes and you stay calm when you face uncertainties, and you can still create like efficient change management under a lot of pressure to achieve. Yeah, so this is very important as VPFL as well, because a lot of times our KPI is also very dependent on, for example, whether the exchange products we can achieve our approval goals or our realization goals, or maybe there's a lot of crisis that happens in the legality side. So as a VPFL, yeah, we have to be very flexible with those changes and to stay calm and to be resilient as well. Yeah, so in general, that would be the competence itself that we need to have. So this is something that is useful for you to maybe identify the gap that you have now if you're a VP, or let's say in the future if you're looking to have VP elections. This is something that you can keep in mind of when you're looking for your successor. Their competency should be up to par to this level. Okay, yeah, so that's so the VP FL role, all these things would be the same for each of the structures. So they should the expectation for KPI, tasks, and competencies would be the same. Okay, so now we go into the more interesting part, or which is on the member side, or the member side, right? So if your LC situation is more that you achieving less than 70 realizations and both your OGV and IGV is in tier 5, then the finance processes can be actually wholly managed by the VPFL, and there's not really a need for additional members to actually support the products. Okay, yeah, but what you do have is still within the IGV projects, you will still have OCVPFL, and in this case, the team management for the OCVPFL will still be managed by the OCP, but the LCVPFL will still be accountable to track the OCVPFL for the IGV project KPI. So this means in terms of ensuring that the IGV budgets are planned and in profit and executed in profit. And for example, the EP agreements are collected and things like that. So this will be on them to be able to actually achieve this as well. Yeah, so this is what you'll be tracking. Yeah, so now some of you might already start to be wondering like, oh, if I don't actually have members and I only have OCVPFL, what happens to my pipeline? How can I ensure that I can have a proper successor and things like that? So this is where, do not worry, not to worry at all. There's still chances for you to actually find a very good successor. To be honest, it doesn't mean that if you don't have members in your team, you will not be able to have a good successor. But this is where, when you are nurturing your pipeline or you're planning for your succession, how you educate and how you track the OCVPFL becomes super important, right? So at the end of the day, it is about just having the skill, right? It's not just that members in my own department will definitely become the VP of my department. Like, of course, we know that people actually shift around and we can apply for different roles as well. So what's most important is that we can equip them with the competencies and the skills for them to be able to manage project budgets and so on, and that will be a very good foundation for them to actually continue to apply for FL in the future as well. Okay, so this is super important. And so this is basically the very basic structure if your LC has less than 70 realizations. So taking it a bit further, if your LC is doing a bit more, you have less more than 70 but still less than 130 realizations, and maybe you have around 2 to 3 products, what you can actually have is a product finance manager role. So in this role, we call this person a manager. So it's and this person will be actually directly responsible for the product budget execution and the product synergy itself. So you'll be giving this person a lot of insights into running operations or the product, but from a very strategic point of view. So that's why the suggestion or the requirement is that they should be from operations profile, a minimum 6 months experience, and definitely not newbies, because it is very, very hard for you to put a newbie into a position of doing product synergy and managing the budget when they don't really have a good understanding of ISAC or running the product. Okay, so it's better if they already have the front office experience, so they can take that and really utilize it, and then they have a new learning about maybe finances of the product itself. Okay, so if you have 2 products, then you can have 2 managers, one for each product. But if you're running 3 products, then the suggestion will be one manager will take on 2 products. So maybe you can look into the heaviness of the role itself. Like for example, if you have maybe more IGV projects, then maybe your finance manager they will just manage one IGV. And if you have, for example, OGV and another product which is running at a smaller scale, then you can have the second manager to take on those 2 products, right? So what happens when you actually let the member thoroughly manage the synergy itself is that give yourself as the LCBPFL more time to actually focus on the overall LC sustainability, more data analysis, and generally have more time to be strategical, right? That's the definite benefit of this position itself, having the finance manager. And so your question might be like, oh, I don't want my manager to directly manage the budget itself. I'm worried that they will screw things up or things like that. I think that it really comes down to how, as a VPFL, we can start to see the importance of empowering our members and giving them a heavier kind of responsibility within finance. So they're not just managing like reimbursement SOP or just doing like venue bookings, but you give them really substantial, give them a very challenging kind of role for them to really learn and build a competency of like being critical, being solution oriented. Yeah, so I think that's the very important thing about how you can actually build these finance managers to also be your future pipeline as well. So the main competency for this is very similar to the VPFL. It's just that the level will be lower. So in terms of data savvy, it will be about just how they can make decisions or recommendations based on data analysis and consider risk and opportunity. So this means that when you're putting them into the situation of managing the product synergy, they would actually be able to make recommendations on how they can improve the product using finances as the resource. So how they can play the role as a resource manager, right? And the second thing in terms of being resilient is about also how they can actually be flexible and stay calm and to communicate effectively to the product team about how to overcome the challenges. So let's say, for example, if your product is not performing, the importance is that they need to be calm and they can actually brainstorm, troubleshoot the problem of the product itself, and figure out the solution together. Yeah, so that's basically in terms of resilient. Okay, KPI for the members for the finance managers will be very similar. The only difference is that, of course, there's still some additional finance things that need to be done, like university relations or administration, and for example, LC inventory management. So if you have these 2 finance managers, then you can split these additional responsibilities to your managers, right? Yeah, and for example, if you have a third manager, then you can give them the role of logistics management, which is to organize things like your LC elections, AGMs, and LC events if necessary. Okay, so this is something that you can build, an extra competency that you can build, or extra tasks that you can give them to do as well. Yeah, so that will be basically for this structure. And it'll be the same if you have more than 130 realizations, but only 2 to 3 products, then you can have these finance managers. Okay, yeah, so the idea is just that finance as a strategic department, you don't really require a huge team to actually to actually support your LC. But the most important thing is how you see each role as a valuable, like a person and a role itself, and how you can actually give them a proper JD to actually to support the products and to support your LC itself. Yeah, so that basically that is the thought process behind having this kind of structure. And yeah, I hope that in the upcoming MRD, to emphasize again, do not recruit new members as your finance manager. Please, please, please make sure that they come from operations profile and they have a minimum of 6 months experience. Yeah, so that's basically it. If you have any questions, please feel free to approach me, Jessie. Thanks. Bye.